And you've just heard Love is a Slow Burn Sting by Garlands. And I'm joined now by Gordon Harrow from the band. Hello, Gordon.
Hello, Ali. How are you? Nice to be here.
Really well. Thanks for joining me. So tell us about the new single. What can you tell us?
The new single is it's a little bit of a nod to my love of all things power pop.
Right.
So yeah, I kind of wrote it in the form of a conversation with my daughter. That's kind of what the song is. So each verse is a kind of almost like a conversation between me and her, and just me warning her of some of the pitfalls that we can all fall into. So, and I've got to thank her for some of the lyrics as well. She actually, some of the things that she says to me, I just jotted down and used it. So a little bit of a family affair.
So it's a co-write.
It's a co-write. I don't know if I'll put her on the co-write quite yet. She's only 14, and if I start putting her on co-writes, that's it. That'll be her.
And I mean, it's quite a poetic title, Love is a Slow Burn Sting. Can you pick that apart a little bit?
It was just something I happened to say to her. I suppose we were talking about relationships and how some things happen very quickly and other things take a little bit of time to ignite. And the two ideas kind of came together because it can be a slow burn, but it can also happen happen really quickly. So it's a kind of best of both worlds, the way we would all want it to be, you know.
That's what I thought, because the idea of the slow burn, but then you've got the sting, which is often
absolutely. And it can, there can be a nip, especially when you're a teenager and you're experiencing all these things for the first time. It's all very easy for me to give my fatherly advice, but they have to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a wee song for her.
Brilliant. And it's the first song for a while, I'm thinking, isn't it? For a year? Is it for a...
It's the first song since January. We released an album at the tail end of 2022, beginning of 2023, and that was our first full-length record. We had released EPs and we had released singles, and we wanted to do a kind of classic 10-track album. We never got it pressed on vinyl. If we had actually managed to get the first 5 songs and the second 5 songs the perfect length. We're all exact. It was exactly the same. So maybe we will get around to doing a pressing. But yeah, we released that in January, and then we've spent the rest of the year writing, recording, and generally trying to have as much fun as possible.
So there's more new music coming after this single.
There's more new music. We have recorded, at the moment we've got 4 songs recorded and mastered and ready to go, but there's 3 or 4 more in the pipeline that we will probably record maybe over the festive season, and we'll just try and keep those singles rolling. We're not going to do another full-length record at the moment. It's a kind of, much as it's lovely to do it, there's not an awful lot of gain from doing it, especially when you're a DIY band like ours and you kind of want to make each song kind of hit. And when you've got a 10-track album, you know, the first 3 or 4 get played a lot and some of them fall off the radar. So I feel quite bad for some of the songs on the album. They maybe haven't had as many listens as they maybe could have done. So yeah, there's more to come. We're just going to keep writing, keep recording.
It's interesting the way that you kind of decide, not you, but people in general decide to release music these days, because it does seem to have changed, maybe down to the way music's released on streaming services and all that. But regular single releases almost seem to get the songs more attention than putting out an album, mate.
Well, I remember many years ago, I think it was, it may have been The Wedding Present, I can't remember. And they released a song every month.
That's right.
And then they compiled it into an end-of-year album. And someone like Peter Gabriel, who has very cleverly over the course of the year released a new song every full moon. So since January or February, he has released a new song every full moon, or every, I think it is every, I don't know if it's to do with full moons. And so he's released like maybe 11 songs, and the album's now going to be released on the 1st of December. And this will be the first Peter Gabriel album in 20 years, but he's released every song already. And I'm not sure how I feel as a lifelong fan.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about knowing all the songs before the album comes out. and it's kind of split. It's kind of split the fan base. So for someone like my big brother, he hasn't listened to any of the tracks released on Spotify. He's waiting for the full length album to be released, whereas I couldn't wait. And I wanted to hear everything. So it's an unusual way, and people have to find lots of different ways to get their music out there.
And of course, Peter Gabriel's will be out on vinyl, and also all the forms.
Of course it will.
You mentioned about releasing an album earlier this year, and you kind of played around with releasing it on vinyl, partly because it sounds as though it was a two-sided thing. You'd almost got the lineup sorted. And
any long play. I mean, any records I own, they were I still think most artists that I love still release records. Well, still release albums. Music with an album and with an LP in mind, rather than we'll stick out 15 tracks on digital platforms. I think there's still a real love for having 5 or 6 songs on one side and having the energy to then flip it. And a huge amount of time and effort goes into organising your track sequence. It's a massive thing, and I'm sure there have been many books written about how to do that. I just think it's amazing, and it was great fun to do. It was great fun to do.
I think it's interesting that the kind of format itself of vinyl, that limitation actually becomes a positive, because you have to think about, where does this song fit? How many songs we're going to put out? I can remember when CDs really took off and were long, you were getting 19 tracks often on the CD. And as you say, first 5, first 10 even you might listen to, but by the end you were kind of...
I must admit, I'm a bit of a kind of geek when it comes to that. When I was a kid and a teenager, I bought lots of records, and of course back then it was very cheap. You could go into a record store. Me and my brother used to go around all the second-hand shops in Glasgow in the Tube and just buy records for peanuts.
Right.
And we probably didn't look after those records very well. And then when I was a student, I bought everything on cassette, because I couldn't really handle the space limitations of buying records. But even then, it was still cheap. Yeah. And then with the advent of CD, it was just too easy, because you could cram them all into a little folder. And I'm one of these people that I now own too many records on vinyl, tape, and CD, and something's got to give. But if I had my choice, I would get rid of all my CDs, keep all my records. And I think you're I don't know, you may feel the same way. If you had the choice, Ali, what would you do?
Boxes.
If you had the choice, if you had the choice and the time, you'd sit and you'd put records on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, but it's a cost for an indie band like us, who we don't have any label backing us, to put out a record. You're then having to charge people a fortune to make any sort of money back. So it's for us, it's more about the process. We love writing, love making music, and it's more of it's a compulsion. So you've got to get it out there somehow.
So tell us a bit about Garlands and how you got together, how the band started.
Garlands have been going, we've maybe been going about 7 years, thereabouts. And I had decided, along with my wife actually, I was going to too many gigs, and I wasn't particularly enjoying being in the audience anymore. And I went to one particular gig, and I feel terrible saying it. I went to a Grizzly Bear gig at the old Academy on Sauchiehall Street a few years ago, and I stood at the back with my arms folded, and I was really, I was fed up. I was bored, and I love the music, but I didn't enjoy the experience. And I decided after that I was just going to start a band, because I hadn't been in a band for too many years. So I advertised, and Darren, our amazing young bass player, he's been with me on the journey all the way through. And Steph, Garland's drummer, who also produces all our music, he's a guy that goes way back to my my early days growing up in Kilmarnock. Steph played in every band. He could play every instrument. And so I was able to talk him out of retirement. And it's great, because he's now recently built a studio, and we can now write and record in the safety of a space that we don't even need to pay fees for. So we've been quite serious about it, because we've put a lot of time and energy and money into it, just just to write pop songs. But hey.
That idea that, you know, you were at a gig and you were, it was boring, that's really interesting. Was it just to think that I've been to so many of these now, I kind of know what happens. I know, you know, there's no surprises left, or?
I don't know. My first gig, Ali, was the Cult. Don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
My first gig was the Cult when I was a teenager. And I am delighted that in 2 weeks' time, me and Steph, we're going to go and see Death Cult at the Garlands. I can't believe that it's been decades since I first saw them, and I am genuinely excited. I feel like a kid going to see Death Cult. And I've seen Peter Gabriel, you know, many times over the years, and there are certain people that just, they hold your attention. And I don't know, maybe I was just in a bad place that night. I don't know, but it just didn't move me. But a good thing came out of it. I decided it was time to start a 3-piece noisy pop band and get back on the stage. So it's been well worth it. So thanks to Grizzly Bear for pushing me back down that route. The other reason I felt it was important to start a band, I spent a bit of time in France a few years ago working with Ken Stringfellow from Posies and R.E.M., Big Star, and Ken produced an EP of mine many years ago, and I knew that when I came back from that experience, I couldn't. I could still play acoustic shows, but I couldn't get the music across the way that I wanted. So, yeah, there was lots of reasons for getting a band back together, and I would highly recommend it. It's the best thing I've ever done.
And are there plans to take these songs and play them live? Is that?
If the offers come in, we haven't actively gone looking for gigs for a while. The last gig we played was with Baby Chaos in stereo, which is maybe a good year and a half ago. I don't know, because Chris Gordon had produced our previous music. But with COVID and with everything that happened, it was kind of, you know, we did a run of shows at King Tut's. We must have played King Tut's 4 times in a year, and I don't know, we've maybe just fallen off the radar a wee bit. So if offers come in, of course, we'd love to play because we're well rehearsed, but we're not actively seeking the live experience. We're just really enjoying studio work at the moment.
That's interesting.
Yeah, good. So we'll see. We'll see.
And you know, you mentioned a 3-piece power pop. Who are the influences on the band? Who kind of inspired you in the music, Garlands?
I would say that me and Steph have got very similar influences. So for me, Husker Du were one of those bands that first time I heard them, aged 17 or 18, they just blew me away. And obviously then we've come through from that era. You know, I love bands like Mega City 4 and Squeeze and Supergrass, and I love artists like Jason Faulkner and Brendan Benson. I love melody. I love beatly harmonies, but I still like my noisy guitars. So I think Love is a Slow Burn Sting's got a nice little mix of both, because it's got a fair amount of kind of Rubber Soul-esque harmonies on it, and I'm a kind of sucker for those John and Paul harmonies. As for the rest of the boys, yeah, I mean, he's really into his punk rock. He loves his favourite bands, The Damned and The Descendants, and yeah, he's got a thunderous way of hitting the skins. And Darren's into everything. Darren loves everything from Stevie Wonder to funk to, you know, we can let him hear music that we love, and yeah, it's maybe not his cup of tea, but I think it kind of gels. It gives the band different different things to talk about when we rehearse. So yeah,
the musicians and influence you particularly mentioned, they're all great songwriters as well. Yeah. You know, I love most of those guys as well, and they're great. You know, Brendan Benson, fantastic songwriter, and
the stuff that Brendan Benson did with Jason Faulkner in the early part of his career, and I was a massive Jellyfish fan. I was lucky enough to see Jellyfish on their 2 UK visits many years ago. But those guys have got such a great range and clever arrangements, and it's like it's a real skill. It's a real skill. I read an interview years ago with Robert Forster from the Go-Betweens saying you know, his job was to sit down every day and compose a song. Now, I don't know if I would enjoy that, but there's definitely, these guys could give master classes. You know, it's a real skill, and yeah, I'm definitely indebted to those people. They're huge inspirations. That's my kind of music.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant music. And what have you been listening to recently? Is there anything that's caught your attention?
Most recently, I've the new Blur album is a thing of beauty. I think I managed to track down 3 different vinyl copies of it. I've got the gatefold sleeve and the Zoetrope vinyl. I just think Damon Albarn and Graham Coxon are just absolute treasures, and I just adored that album. I played it to death. The new Sufjan Stevens album is a real grower. Not a fan of the artwork, but I love the fact that he does everything himself.
Yeah.
Everything. Every instrument. It's just beautiful, and he's got some wonderful female harmony vocalists on it as well, and that's great. But I still go back to my favourites. I always love bands like Midnight Oil. I spent a lot of time in Australia, so I've got a real fondness for Antipodean music. So I like listening to Midnight Oil and Go Betweens, and yeah, I still listen to old classics. My kids are teenagers. Sorry, my kids are teenagers, so they're now listening to things that they heard when they were wee. You know, my kids think that they own Elliott Smith. They think that they own Weezer and Radiohead, and it's like, yep. You know, I know. My sons fall in love with artists like Jeff Buckley, and it's wonderful to hear that music coming out of their bedrooms. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, music's huge in our household. It's on all the time.
I stayed in Australia briefly as well, about 30 years ago. But what really impressed me was the Australian music scene was absolutely bouncing. It had great radio stations, great TV, you know, stations. And it really...
When were you there, Ali? When were you in
95, 96?
Right, I was there 97, 98, 99. I was there for about 5 years.
Right.
And Triple J radio station.
Triple J and Rage on the telly.
Unbelievable stuff. And you could hear, I mean, I found more bands in Australia who weren't from Australia. You know, I discovered bands like Guided by Voices while I was in Australia, Ween, because these things weren't played on, I didn't hear these things on UK radio. But in Australia, it was just one hit after another, and just exceptional music. And yeah, some of the Australian music was just amazing stuff from all the different territories.
Yes,
brilliant stuff coming out of Brisbane and Melbourne was equaling anything I'd ever heard before. So yeah, brilliant stuff.
It was absolutely. It was a real education for me to, as you say, bands that were actually from America or from the UK that those hadn't come across, and here they were.
The really supportive frameworks as well. I remember I worked in a restaurant in King's Cross in Sydney.
Oh yeah.
It was called Venice Beach, and it was on a street called Kellett Street. Right. So you had restaurants and delis on one side, and you had brothels on the other side of the street. And every night, this couple would come into the restaurant, a guy called Wayne Connolly, and he was a really quiet guy, didn't say too much, and him and his wife would come in every night.
Huh?
And it turned out that he was this ARIA award-winning producer. He had produced all the big acts in Australia at the time, and he was currently working with his own band called Knievel, but he was gigging with Ken Stringfellow from the Posies, and all of a sudden you started to realise, wow, just all these links. And Australia, Sydney was a real melting point. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Enough about our memories of Australia. What's next for Garlands? What's
next for us? Get our new single out in November. Well, it seems funny to be saying new single. We've only just released Love Is a Slow Burn Sting, but we want to do that one a month. And the next single is a little bit gentler. It's It's not quite as bombastic as maybe some of the things we've done. It's got a really nice zip about it. So we'll release, it's called Names. We'll release that in November. And then we've got 2 other tracks, which we'll release in the new year. And we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. We're just enjoying ourselves. And yeah, music is still, the songs are there to be written. And it's a joy just to come up with a new hook and a riff and go into the studio and add the sparkle and shine. And yeah, and if gigs come up, great. If they don't, well, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. It's great fun. It really is.
Well,
it's a joy. It's a joy.
I can't wait to hear the new tracks. I love the new single. Thanks very much, Gordon, for taking the time to have a chat.
Ali, it's been an absolute pleasure. Sorry I've talked your ear off tonight, but
that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for.
You'll need to do some serious editing.
And this is Garlands and Forest Noises.